Hey folks, welcome back. This is Andy with the Pork Almanac. Today we have a very special episode. We did prepping for kids in the sense of like making them a couple of weeks ago, and today we're going to kind of flip that on its head and talk about prepping for kids and the world they're inheriting, which I think is a really important conversation. So for the folks that are watching right now on Instagram, hop on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, for whatever reason that I stream to because they allow us to. Any of those places, and continue following along. For the rest of y'all, we're going to keep this party going. So goodbye, folks. Hi, Sally.
Hey.
So please introduce yourself.
So I'm Sally Petrofetta. I own Silver Street Flower Farm in Dover, New Hampshire. And I'm the mom of two 4-year-old twins. Somehow I do both.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
Yeah. I grew up in New Hampshire. I lived in Massachusetts briefly. City life wasn't for me. So now I'm back here, and having kids, I think, I don't know, I guess like 5 years ago when we were thinking of having kids, I wasn't thinking like too far ahead about like what their lives might look like.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, there's like this like underlying assumption that there's a lot of rich people with a lot to lose that will keep things going, and I think that's become really evident. That's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. I think this was like early in Trump's term, and I was like, this is as bad as it gets. It's all up from here.
And you were like, turns out I was wrong.
Yeah. So so their future is something I worry about a lot, especially now that I'm farming professionally, being like even more in touch with the weather and the climate changes. I'm like, wow, this could get bad fast.
Yeah, it doesn't take much.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in New Hampshire, and we've had this warm front come through, and I know there's I have some friends in Appalachia who are going to dip way below freezing tonight, and everything's already started budding out.
No.
And that's bad, and it's very early in the year to be already losing stuff.
Yeah.
And compiled with all the other things that have been hitting the news about wheat and corn and fertilizers, it's not a good start to the year.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a really interesting topic, and it's very personal to me as someone with two children as well, about the same age as yours, and looking at them and thinking about what world they're inheriting from us, and what we can do to, if we can't fix the planet, what we can do to help them have the tools so it's manageable. And I think that's the sober reality.
Yeah, like there's got to be a chance, and I think like the children are our future.
Yeah, and I think like this conversation, like we always talk about, like, all right, so like I don't think anyone's under the illusion that like the entire human race is going to get erased by climate change. Like everyone's like, there's going to be people that survive, and I don't think the goal is necessarily to be like, I want my children to be the survivors for the sake of surviving, but like to have the skills so that if they happen to be those people, that they're like functional human beings on the earth and not like some Mad Max type shit.
Yeah,
like those people were kids too. Like I know it's not real, but like those characters, those tropes exist because there have been terrible people, and like those terrible people were children at one point. So so like it's a reality. No one wants to be like, my kid's gonna grow up to be like the next Hitler, but like that is like a reality, and I'm not sure how we ended up on that subject. But
I know.
Before we get going, for folks that are in the chat, if anyone wants to say hi or anything in particular you were hoping to hear get covered, please don't hesitate. Drop a line. been very quiet. Usually there's people chatting before we get going, but we jumped on pretty quick because we started a little late. That was my fault.
I think we're just being so thorough. Nobody has any questions.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let's start with wherever you want to start, I guess.
Sure. So I guess I wanted to talk just like a little bit about my background. So I grew up in like rural New Hampshire. My mom farmed for our family. And, you know, the power would go out for days at a time. And we spent a lot of time camping, and we were pretty broke. So we were always like trying to find cheap ways to do things, which often meant like doing it yourself or like growing it yourself. And so I learned so much of this just from the way I grew up. And camping for me was like the even more distilled version of that, and I loved it so much. So a lot of the things that I do are just like because I love doing them. Like sometimes we'll cook over the fire because like this is fun. And I think that's important to remember, because as you're like bringing your kids into this, make sure the activities you're choosing are going to be fun for them. If it's not fun, they're not going to want to do it. I also, I say there's no like silver bullet here. I can't like.
This is America. Come on. If I pay enough, I should be able to buy a silver bullet.
Right. You can't turn your kids into survivalists overnight. I mean, if you're in a survival situation tomorrow, like you're going to be the one responsible for keeping your child alive. But I think by like sharing these skills with them, that they hopefully, you know, they will be able to survive, like no matter how bad things get. And also, other disclaimer, I'm like not an expert on early childhood development. I was a nanny for 7 years, and I have 2 young children. And I grew up with a lot of this stuff, but I don't have like a PhD in any of this stuff, just experience.
I mean, like, I don't want to sound like a Luddite, but also like their kids, we've raised them for a million years. It's not like, you know, putting a caveman in, you know, a science lab. Like they're children. Like we've managed to successfully breed humans and keep them basically sane for 200,000 years.
Yeah.
Like I don't think we need a PhD to understand how to like relate to children. We're all children at one point, so I've been told.
Some of us still are.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess I wanted to go into some don'ts before I go to the do's. I think the number one don't is don't freak your kids out about climate change, potential disasters. Don't force your child to do any of this stuff. I think you and I know it's basically impossible to like actually force our kids to do anything.
Yeah.
But if you do, they're not going to enjoy it.
No.
Don't put your kid in high stress, high discomfort situations, any like actual survival situations. And then as you have these experiences with them, don't micromanage them. Let them have their own experience so they can build the confidence to do these things on their own. Right. So back to what I was saying a few minutes ago, I think like doing the things you love and letting them see that is really the best way to get your kids started with some of this stuff. They're going to see you doing what you love, whether it's like gardening or hunting or community organizing. And they'll want to share that with you. I remember when I was a kid, my mom has always done things like as like analog as possible. Like we never had a dishwasher. She's always washed our dishes by hand. Um, she hasn't bought potatoes in gosh, like 40 years, 50 years, I think. Because she
So it's like
stores.
a real heirloom strain right there.
Yeah. So she stores her potatoes. She makes bread. Like my mom just like did these things as part of her everyday life because she loved doing them, and now they're things that I love doing too. Um, and even if it's not like storing potatoes and making bread, I think like whatever your things are, do those things and include your kids. And I think like as you like approach activities that you like doing that you want to include your kids in, recognize that children have like a much different attention span and discomfort tolerance than we do. I think it's really important to like kind of release the outcome. So if I take the twins fishing and I'm like, we're going to stay until we catch 2 fish, like that might not
Maybe.
happen. People are going to
Yeah.
get cold. People are going to get upset, and we're going to like end the day crying without any fish. And then they're going to think about like that miserable time they went fishing. And I think that's hard for adults. Like you want to get a thing done. You want to like, get the pea fence up. But once you have your kid helping you, you have to focus on like letting the child have the experience. You're going to have to fix your pea fence later. That's just like part of the deal.
Yeah. That it's so funny you say that because like today I was out splitting wood and my son was just like meandering around the backyard and he got into the chicken feed. It's like, I'm gonna feed the chickens, and he's not measuring anything. He's just scooping up as much food as he can and dumping it on the ground, then chasing the chickens to go to the pile of food, and then dumping more, and then taking the chicken feed and bringing it to the sheep, like giving them like a whole bunch of copper they're not supposed to be eating, and like you're just like it is what it is. You turn off the electric fence and what happens happens. You just have to accept it.
Yeah, totally. And like they get so much from those experiences. If you create like a reasonably safe environment and just like release children, they'll do what they need to do to learn what they need to learn and like have the experiences they need to have. They're kids are like so intuitive, and we make it so complicated. So most of it, I think the most important thing is just like exposing them to the things you like, managing your expectations about the outcome of these experiences, and also, and like remembering to make this a fun experience for your child. Like, not everything has to be like, they're just jumping with joy, excited. But like we'll like when we go ice skating, the kids do it until they get fussy. And like some days that's 15 minutes if it's really cold. Some days it's an hour. And then we always have hot chocolate after we ice skate. So like by pairing that with something really fun, they'll have like good feelings about these things. And I think the next most important thing, maybe like equally as important, is get outside as much as possible. Kids, I forget where I read this. It might have been the book Last Child in the Woods. Kids are supposed to have like 5 to 8 hours of unstructured outdoor play every day. Yeah,
I'm outside a lot. I'm not even.
And that's also like, I think it's important to recognize like almost everybody has the ability to get outside, but for a lot of people, it's difficult to like be in nature, right? Like if you live in a city, you can get out and like walk around the block. You can go to the park, but spending like 5 to 8 hours outside for a child that lives in the city is just like that's not realistic.
Or even just the winter, like 5 to 8 hours is your sunlight. Like that is from dusk till dawn. And like there's
Yeah.
that needs to get done in between.
Yeah. And I think an important thing that I was going to bring up with going outside is dress them properly. Um, we have a lot of like hand-me-downs. I get a lot of stuff at like consignment shops, and then everything else I order from Polarn au Perret, which is a Swedish like outdoor school store for kids. So my kids have like full rain gear, like rain boots, rain pants, rain coats, rain hats, rain mittens. And when I have to get stuff done on a rainy day in April, they put all that stuff on and they come outside with me. But by dressing properly, kids can be comfortable outdoors for a long period of time. And getting them outside builds their relationship with nature, which is like the reason that is so important now is because between like 8 and 11, their brains will reach a developmental stage where they can like put complex issues into context, where they can like analyze those issues. And if they have this strong relationship with nature and they learn about all this terrible stuff that's going on with climate change, they have a strong reaction to that and they start thinking about what they can do to address those issues. If you talk to a kid who's like 5 or 6 about like the climate change disaster, their brains aren't developed enough to really understand those issues or think about what they can do about it. So what they end up doing is kind of like numbing that idea or like ignoring it. And then when they reach 8 to 11 and they can start to like really understand those things, they continue to be like less reactive. So if it's possible, you want to kind of you want to give them like age appropriate information about climate change and the environment. And like if they really try to get into it, be like, it's a grown-up problem and there are a lot of grown-ups thinking about it right now and it's not something you need to worry about. And then as they get older, start to like share more of that with them. But if they don't have that strong relationship with the outdoors, the truth isn't going to affect them as much. So getting them outside, getting them doing fun stuff outside is so key. And I think some important things to remember as you get your kids outside are, again, like don't micromanage them. Like be out there with them, but kind of like let them do what they want to do in the outside space. It's okay to set boundaries. Like my neighbor is a tree guy, so we have all these like crazy piles of logs in his backyard, and the kids like to climb on those. And this is a rule from their school: when you're climbing, you have to have 3 parts of your body on like whatever you're climbing, the rock, the log. So I try to enforce that. They mostly follow it because they're used to it from school. So I know like when they're climbing on these logs, they've got like a good sense of balance. They've got 3 body parts on the log. If they like kids fall and like they can get hurt, but the risk is like I've like evaluated the risk. It's reasonable, and as long as they're like following the rules, they get to like explore how they like. Um, and I, I am still working on this. I'm a lot better about it. But if you're watching your child playing outside, instead of being like, be careful, be careful, be careful, like I try to say, like, be aware that like right where you're jumping, there's, there's some sharp pieces. And then I let them like check that out. You can ask questions like, oh, did you see under the log there that um, there's there are some pretty sharp pieces of wood, and the kids are able to like evaluate the risk and decide if like what they're doing is reasonably safe. And like if it's not, then like set a boundary. Be like, there are some really sharp pieces of wood over here, and we're not gonna go past this, this post today.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
that's like I think about my son, like when I try to get him rein him in a little bit, when he gets going and trying to set those boundaries. And what ends up happening is if you like doing the be careful, things like that, they just tune you out. And it's really hard to rebuild that relationship of like, are you listening? And getting them to tune into the fact that like, hey, I'm trying to do this to keep you safe and to set boundaries, but still give you the freedom to explore and to learn and to inevitably get hurt and learn from those experiences of like, this is the thing we've been trying to explain to you is going to happen if you don't listen, and you didn't listen and look what happened. Or to just give them the space to get injured safely.
yeah,
And that's really difficult. It's one of those things I think for a lot of people before you're a parent, you're like, yeah, I can do that. And then you like see that thing that you made and spent a bunch of money and time and energy and love on, and then just be like, technically there's like a 1% chance he could die doing this, but like, I
yeah,
know that's pretty illogical, but I still should let him do it and like take my hands off. And that can be really hard.
yeah. It's definitely I cringe a lot.
Yeah,
But I
basically.
try not to say anything.
Yeah. Like I said, like I'll turn off the electric fence and let my son go wild, and like he knows like not to touch the yellow wire, and it's like sometimes I'm worried that like, well, if the fence is off and he touches it and he sees that he doesn't get hurt, is he going to learn that? And even though I explained to him like I turned it off, like it's like, all right, well, do I want to build the habits or do I want to build the safety? So I try not to tell him when I turn it off, just to be
Yeah,
safe, and then keep an
yeah.
eye on him, and hopefully
And I
doesn't
didn't
touch it.
even use my electric fence. I haven't used it since the kids were born because my mom told me she's a total safety freak. I guess if toddlers, like young children, if they hit their like head or neck on the electric fence when it's on, it can kill them. And it's just
Now
like a
you've ruined
little,
it for me.
it's like a little garden fence to keep like woodchucks out. Um, and I was like, okay, well, I don't want my kid to die.
Yeah, and the problem is like there's to like kind of zoom out a little bit is that the last 40, 50 years of like marketing have figured out that's a really good way to sell stuff is buy this or your kid might die. And
Yeah.
that underwrites a lot of the way we react and act about things. Like you think about like again, this is something I think you hear a lot from people who haven't been parents yet. Is like, well, previous generations didn't have these things to keep our kids safe, and like or like parents, my parents, my uncles, whoever survived, and like, do you really need it? And then you become a parent, and then you feel like you do, because of this very intelligent and creative and sophisticated marketing system that's basically convinced you subconsciously like if you don't buy these things you're killing your child,
Yeah.
and
Well,
it's hard to undo that.
my mom hit me with another statistic. I don't know. She saw me doing something she wouldn't have allowed my children to do. And she said, I don't know where she found this number, but before 1950, 1 in 5 children died before the age of 5. And I was like,
Nice.
okay. And like some of that's, children dying in like early infancy. Some of it's like because people just used to let their kids run around and they would like fall into a creek and drown.
Going
So
through a fridge that was on the side of the road that's supposed to go to the dump and close the door. Yeah. Like all things that aren't issues today, because just the way our society is constructed.
yeah.
But
Anyway, evaluate the risk for yourself and your child.
yeah, we don't need to, I guess, talk about all the different ways your child could die today. But
I mean, parents think about it all day long. So
yeah, it explains a few grays.
I'm sure you guys are all set with that. So I guess like the last like broad piece of this I wanted to talk about was building resilience in your child through emotional management. And as I was thinking about this, I was like, wow. So I think like millennials or elder millennials, at least, we were still in the like the group of generations that was like, don't cry, like wipe your tears off, get back up, dust yourself off, and get going. And I think like younger millennials or maybe Gen Z, I think there was more like helicopter parenting, like parents trying to solve all their kids' problems. And neither of those things is the answer. If
Don't tell my
you're like,
parents that.
what's that?
Don't tell my parents that.
Yeah. So if your kid is upset because, his sister took his toy, I like, if you say like, oh, well, you have all these other toys, stop crying. Or if you're like, well, I'll fix that. And you take the toy back from his sister and give it back to him. Like neither of those is a solution. The first one is like invalidating. Your child feels isolated and abandoned. If you fix the problem for your child, that's like helicopter parenting, and they're not going to learn the skills that they need to solve problems. And I think like the right response is co-regulation. So letting your child like sit with their feelings and sitting with them with their feelings without trying to fix problems and without ignoring them. So when you do that, when his sister takes his toy away and he's crying, if you sit with him and you say like, that would make me really upset too. Like, I see that this really didn't go the way you wanted. I understand why you're so sad. The child feels validated. They can experience the emotion. They can express the emotion, and then they can move past it. And it can take a long time. Like little kids we call them big emotions because we've been taught to like shrink our emotions down. But you have to be like the emotionally mature adult with a regulated nervous system and be with them. And they can kind of like plug into your nervous system and like eventually get closer to regulation. And when you do this, it teaches them that they can sit with discomfort, they can sit with hard feelings and come out the other side. Like they'll survive this.
And that can be really hard as a parent to do.
Yes, it can. It's probably the hardest thing. But over time, if you can practice that consistently, their tolerance for uncomfortable feelings will increase. So you'll have to do that less and less, and your child will also be like really emotionally resilient, and that like emotional resilience carries over into physical resilience, and that like when kids know like I can be uncomfortable and then be okay, like that's really powerful. And uh, I think like resiliency is probably the most important skill our kids will need as they're going into into their adult lives, because we don't know what we're walking into.
Yeah. There's no safe spaces in that future,
No.
psychologically speaking.
No safe spaces. Yeah. So I think like as you're doing this, making sure you're like as a parent, you're checking in with yourself and making sure like you, whether you're like going to therapy or like working on it on like your nervous system on your own, like um being like a regulated adult is so important for kids. And if you can't deal with their big emotions, and it doesn't have to be like 100% of the time, like half the time I'm like, I can't, guys, like figure it out. um, but making sure like as their caretaker or someone who's around them a lot, that you're like a regulated person and you can like be emotionally mature enough to sit with them through a lot of those feelings. um, and I think with all of these experiences, especially like being outdoors, um, giving your kids a recovery period is really important. So if I take them fishing and everybody's freezing and we don't catch anything and it's like kind of a bad time, that's when you want to like create a recovery period. So like we'll end the experience with something they like going through McDonald's or something, and then give it a while before you go fishing again. Let their systems like kind of repair, and then you can try it again. And like each time you do that, you're going to be able to like extend their window of tolerance. Um, but if you push them too hard, so they're like totally miserable, and then you're like, well, we didn't catch anything yesterday, so we're going again today, they're going to end up hating fishing.
That was me last summer. We were someplace where there was some good trout fishing, so I took my son. He was super excited. He was 3.5, so he has his little 3-foot fishing pole, and like all I wanted to do is throw it in and then like reel it in right away. And I'm like, no, buddy, you gotta let it sit out there. And we were up for like 15 minutes. He's like, I want to go home. I was like, dude, we just got here, and like trying to keep him focused on the task at hand. And I like ended up like not even fishing. Basically, I spent an hour trying to get him distracted enough so I could, and then I just gave up.
Yeah.
And then the next day I was like, do you want to go back fishing? He's like, no. Like, he's back on it this year though. Like we're
Good.
team fish again.
Well, he said a period of repair over the winter.
Yeah, a very long period of repair.
You got to recover from the experience.
Yeah, he's hopefully forgotten it. It's just me getting angry at him, and him like I'd cast it out for him, and then he would like follow me and just drag his bait, and I'd be like, can you reel it in now?
Oh my god!
Is there a fish on it? I was like, oh dude, you're killing me.
They just when they're that little, like they can't do anything right.
They can't even listen to you finish the sentence to like figure out what you're saying.
No. Oh, that's funny. So yeah, I guess and then like I guess I wanted to talk a little bit about, I thought people might be looking for some like specific ways to include kids in like their kind of prepper activities.
Yeah, before you get going, I will say I think a lot of people are newer to this idea, like, or it's been like something that they've like dreamed about, and it's like I finally have space to do these types of things, but I don't know what I'm doing, so how can I in any way guide these conversations for my own children or to understand what's age appropriate? Because I think a lot of people would say, "Oh, you have a 4 year old, 4.5 year old, like." He could do like if you were to look at like a meme about like chores for your kids, it'd be like, oh, let the chickens out, feed the chickens. Like you've never met a 4 year old, have you? Because
No,
that's not happening.
no,
So I think this the understanding of what children can do in this type of a setting versus the reality of what they can do, while they are incredibly creative and resilient in terms of the structured components, they're much more limited than I think it's on a surface level people would expect for someone with the vocabulary and the emotional comprehension and all these other things that children do offer.
absolutely. Um, yeah, I mean, when I'm learning a new skill, it usually means like staying up late and like researching and doing it myself after the kids have gone to bed, and then figuring out how I can modify an activity to do it with the kids. Um, so like recently I made soap, which I'd been afraid to do because like lie. Um,
Chemicals.
and I'm not sure that's one I'll do with the kids until I'm a little more comfortable with it. But like I, stayed up late and like read a bunch of soap recipes and read like a bunch of ways to do it. And um, like they went to bed and I measured everything out and spent the night making soap and stayed up late cleaning up. And um, there's like including them as you're learning can be like very difficult. Um,
Especially when there's more than one.
yeah. But yeah, so like for stuff that I'm more comfortable with, I do kind of like think about each thing, and I think about like how to make it safe for the kids and how to make it fun for the kids. And again, I kind of like release the outcome. Like again, like you can do something with the kids and then after they go to bed, you might have to redo it. But and there's some stuff that like you just don't want to do with the kids, and that's fine too. Um, so we do a ton of fires in our backyard. So we have about an acre, um, and the kids help me. So okay, so also as you're teaching your kids this stuff, please like really be introspective and like think about what you're like teaching and involving your boy children in and your girl children in, because I realized this year I like didn't know how to start a fire. I was like, I'm sure I've started fires before. I've been part of them. Like I like intellectually know how to start a fire. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So the reason for that was because growing up, like my dad would be like, no, it's not safe. I'm starting the fire. And then like as a teenager in New Hampshire, we'd have fires like on a Friday night and like kick the can. And like the guys would always do it. And then like my husband would always do it. And I was like, this is bullshit. Like nobody ever really taught me this. So I'm trying to be really mindful. I have a boy and a girl twin, and I'm just trying to be really mindful that I expose both of them to like all different kinds of stuff. And like, I definitely want to lean toward the things they're more interested in. But my girl's going to know how to start a fire.
Good.
Sorry, were you going to say something?
I just said good. It is
Yeah.
interesting to hear that because I think about like my kids and what I try to expose them to. And my daughter's older, but also her language is behind. So like in some ways they're at the same level, in other ways he's ahead, in other ways she's way ahead. So like balancing their skill sets with what I teach them means they often can do very different things for very different reasons.
Yeah.
But like the gender piece, I guess I hadn't really thought about it, but I probably should.
But like I think that's a really important thing too, Andy. Like you say, I feel like you say this all the time in your podcast, or it's like very central to your message that like we can't all be experts in everything. And my goal isn't to teach my kids every single skill they would need to survive. Like, I can't do that. I don't know how to raise goats.
Not yet.
I'm never getting goats.
You say that. Call me in 10 years.
Yeah. So I wanna lean toward the things I'm interested in, expose them to like a lot, and then like help them get involved in the things they're particularly interested in. But like they're gonna be interested in different things. And like I think it's fine to lean into that. You don't have to have like your children don't have to be like Renaissance people, Renaissance preppers.
They're not going to be Rambo.
Right. So with the fires, I watched videos on how to start a fire, and I finally got the hang of it. And the kids, and I was like talking to them while I did all this. They're watching me. I'm like, go get me little sticks. I need little sticks. Now I need big sticks. And we let them play with the fire a little. Like they'll stick a long stick in and like set it on fire and then like stick it in the snow. We're like right there as they're doing this, and like talk about fire safety and stuff like that. And then we cook over the fire sometimes. I have like a big cast iron Dutch oven, and I just like put it in the coals and, fry up some carnitas. And they love doing hot dog dinners, which is great.
Yeah. I mean, it's something they'll eat, and
Yeah.
it's easy to cook. You can't really screw it up.
Right. And we haven't taken them fishing, but they're desperate to go fishing, which is something that's going to happen this summer. And I'm sure, as you've experienced, it's like, kids this young can like do the experience of fishing, right? Like they can't. It's hard for them to be successful at it. But if this is like an adventure with dad and like we're touching slimy worms and like you practice casting and like you don't catch a fish, but it's okay because you like played with worms in the woods.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's about engaging and having positive experiences with
definitely.
the ecology around us. And that's something, I mean, I take my kids for hikes all the time, and I feel like I'd never see other people with young kids, my kids' age, ever, which is kind of concerning. Like I went for a hike with my daughter last weekend, and we did like a 3-mile trek, and we passed like 30 people, and not one person had a child, and that's scary. Not to like. I'm not trying to like toot my own horn. It's just like it's frightening because the ease of technology to just kind of tune into that or let the kid out into the suburban backyard that's just a grass and a swing set, and like there's nothing wrong inherently with the swing set, but they're not engaging with a world that's not controlled.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, like walking in the woods was one of the things on my list because so my parents have 6 acres about half an hour away, and they have like a big hill. We would go sledding down it. When we were little, we called it the suicide hill because it was so steep. And now it's like this little
Yeah, at the
no big
time
deal.
it was huge.
um, so we walk down the hill, and at the bottom of the hill, there's like a swampy area we call the swamp pond. And in the spring, we find tadpoles in there, and we listen for the peepers. And where, like, it's kind of sad. People have bought up all of the land around my parents and cleared it, like mostly for pasture. But so my parents have this like 6 acre mostly wooded lot. And we'll go down there with the kids, and we find different pine needles and pine cones and like weird dried, just like swamp plants. It sounds so lame, but like the kids, they love it, and they just want to like explore like textures. And like there's a little stream that we walk down to, and we make little leaf boats and like see how far the leaf boats go. And none of this is rocket science. It's just like engaging in, yeah, like an uncontrolled natural environment with the kids.
Yeah.
And this is what I did growing up. I just like wanted, my son asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, when I was younger. And I was like, I think I wanted to be like a Native American. I just wanted to walk barefoot through the woods and eat berries and like forage.
Yeah, I get that. My parents, I was a city kid, but we lived up against some protected woodlands. And my parents were immigrants, so they were just basically like, we'll see you tonight, like very much old school. And like I basically, despite living in the city, also like I got the best of both worlds. Where their house was near a highway and some protected land. So it was just like, beside us, there was like nothing, even though I could walk literally everywhere I ever needed to go, like pizza, movies, like everything was right there, but also the woods. And it's one of those things I didn't really appreciate at the time. It was just kind of like this thing that was there. Oh, you want to go fishing? Like go grab your pole and walk into the backyard. There's a couple ponds back there. Like,
yeah.
At the time, it just was like, oh yeah, this is how everyone lives. And then
you
grew up and you're like, oh, I guess not.
Yeah. Now as an adult, you're like, life is miserable.
Yeah, and you start podcasts, and I don't know, you just you
try to make
have
it
an
fun
outlet.
for your kids.
Yeah. And that's like what this is all about, is making things that are increasingly inaccessible accessible in a time where that access and that knowledge and that resilience, which I think really underscores a lot of it, how to make that something that's actually feasible for a future generation, which is like no small task, but also like something we have to do.
Yeah.
So like, to kind of again zoom back out a little bit, like one of the big conversations I think, especially with Zoomers, is around like it's irresponsible to have children, and like there's some very valid reasons for making that argument, but at the same time, in saying that we shouldn't have children, or that people shouldn't if they I don't know, live in the first world or middle class, whatever it might be, that again, to kind of talk about what we've been talking about, takes humans out of like a natural system. And that if we are innately human and innately a part of nature in some capacity, saying that people shouldn't have children because of ecological collapse kind of disengages from that reality of what humans are.
Yeah.
So,
although I don't know if I would recommend having children.
No, I'm not sure if I would either, but if you want to, I don't think that's a problem. I think you just have to go in with eyes wide open, which I think, much like many things millennials have done, the future we were promised and the future we were given are very different things.
Yeah.
So
Just trying to make the most of it. Trying to put
Yeah.
lipstick on a pig here.
Yeah, exactly. That's basically my life, is trying to put lipstick on a pig. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to chat about?
Yeah, I'll just like run through the stuff we do with the kids really quickly. So I garden with them because I have my flower farm in the backyard. I give them their own garden space. I took them, I got them on pine tree garden seeds, and like we looked through all the pictures, and the kids like picked out different things they wanted to grow, and I ordered the seeds, and they're starting the seeds now. I think I have like behind my computer, I have like seed blocks. Um, they help me spread cover crop. That's a really easy one. We're just like casting it out. Um, Susie loves helping me plant stuff. She like helped me plant 150 peonies in the fall. It's like you just kind of like set things up for them to do it, and then just be there with them. Planting peonies is not, it's not rocket science. Like you dig a hole and you put it in and you cover it up with dirt. Like 4-year-olds can do that. She was 3. 3-year-olds can do that. They love checking on the chickens. So again, this doesn't like take any chores off my plate, but they will actually they can bring out scraps to the chickens by themselves. So I'll give Susie like a bowl of chicken scraps, and she'll bring it out to the chickens and close the coop door behind her. They like going in the coop and getting the eggs, which is disgusting.
Yeah.
And
especially this time of year.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like in the winter, it's sort of all like frozen. Now it's
like built up, and you can't get the hose out quite yet to like rinse everything down. Not a good time.
But like, yeah, I mean, midsummer, she would like every afternoon we would go outside, and then before we went inside, she would want to go and play like in the chicken coop. She's the chicken whisperer. She loves them. And like, you know what? It kills 20 minutes. So I let her do it. And then we just wash hands really well. We just finished up boiling down all of our maple sap. The kids do a lot of that with us. So they'll like come out and check the trees. They like to like pull out the tubes and just like put them in their mouths and drink. Sometimes it's from the tree. Sometimes it's from the bucket. And we just like, we talk about all these things as we do them. Like what, if we have a 5-gallon bucket of sap that freezes overnight, then we try to let it thaw and like about halfway, and then pull out the ice and trash that, because the sap with a higher concentration of sugar will melt first. So the ice that's in there is mostly water. So you're pulling out some sugar, but like that's a lot of water you won't have to boil off.
Yeah.
So we talked to them about like, oh, well, this part's frozen because it's more water, and this part is melted because it's more sugar, and like sharing all of that with them. We do composting. They love composting. Susie brings me her banana peel every morning and asks to put it in the compost bucket herself. She says it'll make great dirt for the garden. We make yogurt, not like all the time as like a fun thing. We'll make yogurt, sourdough bread, cheese, just soft cheeses. And like I talk to them about how all of that works. We've done some canning. Again, that's like it's a little hard because it's like you're dealing with something that's so hot that like it's
danger.
Yeah. But like we'll go pick a bunch of blueberries and then like they'll help me add all the ingredients, and we'll make jam, and then like Mama will can it, and then we'll check all the seals to make sure like the top got pulled down. And growing up, I always helped my mom. So with onions, you pick them, and then you let them sit out for like a day, and then you braid the tops of the onions together. So you just like have this big braid of onions. So I'd always help my mom with that. And then we would sew with beans for drying. You just like sew through the tip of every bean. And then we'd have these like long strings of beans that we would hang around the house. And then when they're dry, you just pop them open and pop all the seeds out. And like all that kids can do, that's easy. We do walking in the woods, we got that. We do a little like seed saving, just very like amateur seed saving. So we'll see if we see like a flower we really like, I'll put a organza bag around it and then snip it off and save the seeds from that flower and see if it like regrows a similar flower. We'll like let some lettuce go to seed, and then we like shake the seed where we want lettuce to grow the next year, and it'll just like come up. And they, oh my gosh, they know everything about seeds. We talk about seeds all the time. And like, if you don't have the outdoor space to do a lot of this stuff, like I just got some like alfalfa seeds and sprouted them on my kitchen windowsill. So we have bean sprouts. Like there are ways to modify all of this stuff if you don't have land or like space to do it the way I do.
Yeah. One of the things you'd mentioned, like going for it's one of the things I did last year with my son is, and he was 3, is I took a bunch of willow cuttings and planted them in a stream, like right along a stream embankment on some conservation land, and like brought my little drill with the auger bit on it, and he thought that was like the funnest thing to just like take a mallet and smash some sticks into the ground, or use the auger bit and drill a little hole so they could slide right in. And like, you don't need land to do that. You just have to be like, oh, that's a willow tree. I can cut off a branch and stick it in the ground 10 feet away. And it's a cool experiment, and they get to understand like where plants come from and how they can propagate.
Definitely. And there's like, I mean, at least around us, there's so much public land. I know it might be harder if you live in like the heart of a city or something, but you drive like 5 minutes in every direction and you're at like some kind of like land reserve. And I make baskets out of actual like reeds. But like a fun thing I do with the kids outside, we find like grasses, or last year we did it with, we were using like corn husks, and we just like find what we can find and we make little baskets and like see if they'll hold our raspberries. We talk a lot about like using like natural navigation. So we know the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and they love looking at the stars. And we talk about like directions with the stars, and how like I love this. So if you hold your hand out like this against the horizon, the number of fingers between the horizon and the sun. So each finger represents 15 minutes. So if you hold your hand out like this and the sun is 4 fingers from the horizon, you have an hour before the sun sets. Isn't that so cool?
Yeah, I did not know that one.
And like to like telling the weather, like if there's a halo around the moon at night, That means it'll probably snow. We made butter. I don't have I bought heavy cream. I don't have any dairy animals. But we just put it in mason jars and I made them shake, 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 shake until we made butter. And then we had bread and butter. And it's just these are just the things I like to do. I love cooking. I'm very crafty, and those I try to find a way to share those skills with them that are enjoyable and age appropriate, but also I feel good that these skills will serve them when shit gets weird. And then, so 2 books I wanted to suggest for adults are, there's Last Child in the Woods and Balanced and Barefoot. It's all about the benefits of getting your kids outside. For kids, and these books are what got me thinking about talking about this stuff. So these are all books that my mom read to me when I was young. They're kind of about making things from scratch, or this kind of closed loop cycles. So Pancakes is about a guy, this kid who wants pancakes, and his mom's like, well, you have to go get the wheat if you want pancakes. So he goes to get the wheat, and then she's like, well, now you have to grind the wheat. So he brings it to the miller, and she's like, well, now you need an egg. So he goes to the hen to get an egg, and now you need milk. And so she keeps telling him all the ingredients. He has to go and get all the ingredients, and then has to process the ingredients, and then his mom makes him a pancake. Charlie Needs a Cloak by Tommy DePaula. So Charlie has this tattered old cloak, and everyone said Charlie needs a cloak. So he shears the sheep, he washes the wool, he cards the wool. So he processes the wool, spins it into thread or yarn, weaves the fabric, sews the cloak, and then Charlie has a beautiful new cloak at the end. The Ox Cart Man. Sorry.
Yeah, I got that because of you.
Yeah. This is my signed copy. This is by Donald Hall. Well, so Donald Hall is my friend's grandfather. And so she got him to sign 2 copies for the twins when they were born. So this is, he wrote there's a little note in it, but his cousin told him this story. He was a New Hampshire poet laureate. And so this is sort of an oral New Hampshire story. And it's about a farmer, and he loads up his cart with all of his harvest goods and everything he's made all year. And he loads up his ox cart, and he goes to Portsmouth, and he sells all of these things in Portsmouth. And he just buys a few things that his family needs, some needles so his daughter can sew, and splurges on some wintergreen peppermint candy. And then he walks back home. He sold the turnips, the potatoes, the mittens his daughter made, all the extra things that they had. And then he sold his ox, and he sold the ox cart. So he goes back home. It's early winter, and he starts working on a yoke for the new ox. And he builds another ox cart, and he raises the ox, and they make maple syrup, and they plant the turnips. And it's just a really beautiful story of they're of self-sufficiency, I guess. There's just no waste, and their life it's so simple. But that's always been a favorite of mine. And I couldn't find it, but The Little Red Hen is another one where she the hen finds some wheat, and she wants people to help her grow the wheat and grind the wheat and make the bread, and no one helps her. So she keeps the bread for herself. But again, that's another like from scratch story. Blueberries for Sal. They can the blueberries that they pick. And I think it's sort of like for some kids, I think it would feel sort of like foreign. Like they just go to a hill and pick blueberries and then can them for food. And 13 Moons on Turtle's Back is like different Native American stories. Why the different full moons have the different names, and it has to do with like the weather and different things that happen like at those times of year. When I was young in the mountains, it was like a really sweet story about kids growing up in it's like rural Appalachia, probably like 1910, 1920-ish. And they have to get their water from the well, and their grandmother heats water on the stove and puts it in like a metal bin so they can have a bath. For general outdoor books, I really like The Hike. A friend of mine gave this to me. So it's 3 girls go on a hike, and they're like foraging, and this book has notes about like what all the different plants are. So the kid, and then in the back it has like tips about like what you can eat when you're in the woods, and then there's a whole series of books, like the Over Under series. There's like Over Under the Snow, Over Under the Pond, and those talk about life, like, you know, what's walking on top of the snow and what's going on underneath the snow. And those are just like really great books for kids, like for general like nature learning. And then as kids get older, books that I haven't gotten there yet with my kids, I'm sure I'll find more, but books that were really influential for me were the Little House on the Prairie series, My Side of the Mountain. And I don't know if you read these in school, but like a bunch of Gary Paulson books.
Yeah, he did
The Hatchet, the Yearling.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember those. It's been a long time.
But My Side of the Mountain, when I read that, I was like, I can just run away and live in a hollow tree and have a hawk. Yes, please.
Yeah, sign me up. How's no one told me this yet?
Anyway, those are my recommendations. But I mean, I'm curious if anybody has any like specific questions, because I know I just kind of went over like what I do with my kids, and how I include them in that stuff. But
yeah, I'm going to guess that just based on our general listenership, most people that are watching don't have kids or are maybe thinking about it and trying to figure out how to engage with the reality of the world we live in. So I don't know if anyone will have any questions, but yeah, hopefully they do. But yeah, I'd be definitely interested to hear what folks have to say. But yeah,
it's definitely a tough time. If like, I think for women especially who have this like, I mean, yes, it's wonderful all the science we have that can kind of extend our childbearing years, but we have a pretty small window during which we can have children, and like you have to make a decision, and like right now the future feels so uncertain, and like how are you supposed to, it's just, you're just like looking into the darkness. Like how are you supposed to decide if you can like bring another person into the world? That's really hard.
Yeah. Unlike I think most generations, we're at this point where the future isn't like, and I would say even differently, than like, even generations like during the Cold War, where there isn't maybe this thing will happen. Like we know it's happening, and it's much more, it has a different set of like permanences to it versus like the Cold War. If a nuclear bomb was dropped, and it's like, yeah, all these things are going to happen if this happens, but uh, it's still not a part of like the fundamental building blocks of like the Earth. It's like this bad thing happens, and that place where this bad thing happens is destroyed. Whereas climate change is like all encompassing in a totally different way.
Yeah.
And it raises like some really important existential crises about, or questions rather, about like what are we doing this all for?
Yeah.
Don't have an answer for that.
I like, yeah, having kids is such a double-edged sword because I'd say most of my friends do not have kids. And one of them said to me, like, I was talking about some survival thing, and um, she was like, "Oh, well, once there are water shortages, I'm just going to kill myself. Like, I'm not going to fight for water."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Wow, what? Like, that's a luxury. I I can't think like that.
Yeah.
You know, I can't leave these kids." And I but also having kids forces you to be thoughtful about the future. Like if I didn't have kids and I knew I could just like off myself when stuff got too bad, then like
Live it up.
yeah. I mean like sure, I wouldn't be worried about this stuff, but I also wouldn't like when you have kids, you like have to hope. You're forced to think of solutions because like the alternative is truly unthinkable, you know? Like
Yeah.
so it's helpful in that way, but it's definitely like a lot to carry.
Yeah. And the way I think about it, and the way I guess I think about a lot of things, is like if it's really hard to wrestle with, it should be hard to wrestle with. Like what we're talking about in terms of like climate change and bringing children into this world, like it should be a difficult decision, and it should be a burden to carry. The same way, like it's that I feel like that's what I always say when I talk about like butchering animals. Is like it's not easy, but it shouldn't be easy. Like
Yeah.
you're taking something's life. It should be something that's difficult for you to do. Um, but it shouldn't be something that makes you incapacitated. And same way with like raising children and like grappling with climate change and what that holds for not just our kids' future, but also like if they choose to have children as well, what our grandchildren's future uh, will look like, which will be exponentially likely worse. And that doesn't mean don't do it. It just means like you are signing a contract basically, that you are more vested in the future than other people probably will be.
Yeah.
So this has been a really upbeat and happy conversation. Mrs. Knoll, hi. It's an old friend. Yeah, any other final thoughts? Anything else you wanted to talk about? Since apparently we have a quiet audience tonight. I
don't
see you're
know.
all out there. I don't know why you don't want to talk.
Oh, we also I don't wait, which side? I forced the kids and I cut some forsythia branches, brought those inside, so we're watching those bloom. And we rolled some beeswax candles. Next up is tallow candles. No, I don't know how to make tallow candles. That would be a real flex.
Yeah, that would. I know one person that's made them, and they were not impressed with the quality that comes out of them.
Well,
But they might have just not know what they were doing. So
I think they smell really bad.
yeah, basically it was like a slow cooked bacon candle. which
Mm.
whatever. Yeah, I don't know if it smelled like bacon, but I think it had like the slow cook effect of bacon, if that makes sense. Yeah, so for folks that are watching, you can go follow Sally at Instagram's handle of Silver Street Flower Farm. If you want to throw her a couple bucks for taking some time and chatting with us, hit us up on Venmo at Poor Pearl's Almanac, and I will forward that along. And anything else you wanted to plug or thoughts, anything you wanted to include?
I don't think so. I mean, definitely follow me on Instagram. Most of it is like happy flower stuff.
Yeah, you have nice flowers. I don't grow nice flowers. Although I have some hollyhocks that I sprouted from seed that are like 10 feet in that direction right now.
Good job,
I'm
Andy.
very
You're
proud of
doing
myself. Yeah. I'm not a flower person, so I was like, I'm going to do it. Watch this. So, yeah. So for other things, if you guys are enjoying this tomorrow night, assuming there's no cancellations or surprises, we'll be talking with, I think it's Food Not Bombs Tucson. So we'll be talking about starting a mutual aid organization, which I think will be super cool if you're interested in supporting your fellow neighbors. We also have an episode coming out on the podcast. We just had an episode come out on the Eastern Agricultural Complex. So if you're interested in plant domestication and how North America was once a global hub for plant domestication, go tune in for that. Next week, we'll be chatting with Aaron Parker from, you might know him from Propaganda by the Seed. He also has Edgewood Nursery, and we'll be talking domestication and how you can do it yourself. So if you want to start domesticating your front yard, go for it. That's pretty much it. You can, if you want to support us, get early access to content, hit us up on patreon.com/poorpearlsalmanac, $2 a month. If you enjoyed the Twitch content and you want to tell us that you want us to keep doing it, you can throw us $2 by using your Amazon Prime subscription, because apparently you get a free one. So you can toss that to us if you'd like, or if you really want to give us a couple bucks, you can do that too. Also through Twitch. Doesn't matter to us which one you use, but if it's free and you're not using it, like, give it to us, because it's better than letting Amazon have it for no reason. And that's pretty much it. Sally, this has been a ton of fun.
Yeah, I'm so glad we finally got to talk in person.
All right, bye.